Princess Zelda is one of the 3 main characters found in almost every Zelda game, but we know very little about her family. We've seen her father appear in a handful of Zelda games, including, of course, Breath of the Wild, but he's not the only family member of Zelda's to appear in the Zelda series, because in just one Zelda game, Princess Zelda's brother makes an appearance. And because of this brother, the Kingdom of Hyrule is plunged into chaos. Let's uncover the Prince of Hyrule, the character that Nintendo and the world forgot about. So famously, the Legend of Zelda series has a long and somewhat complex timeline, in which many different heroes, each bearing the name Link, save many different princesses, each bearing the name Zelda. But in the second Legend of Zelda game, 1988's Adventure of Link, we learn about not just any old Princess Zelda, but the first ever Princess Zelda there was. You see, back in the very earliest days of the Kingdom of Hyrule, this land was ruled over by a kind and benevolent king. He used the Triforce to maintain peace within the kingdom. Now, this king had 2 children. One of them was a daughter called Zelda. In the game's Japanese manual, she's referred to as the Shodai Zerudahime, which means first ever or first generation Princess Zelda. Zelda is sensible, wise like her father, an ideal daughter. But the king has another child, an eldest son, aka Princess Zelda's older brother, and it's this Prince of Hyrule we're talking about today. So the prince is, in a lot of ways, the opposite of his father. He's unwise and rash. And so, as the King of Hyrule enters old age and starts to prepare for what will happen when he dies, the king makes a decision. The Prince of Hyrule is his eldest child, and so of course he's the one who will inherit everything. The castle, the throne, the king's riches. But there is one thing the king doesn't want his son to inherit. And that is the Triforce, which the king uses to rule the land. He just doesn't trust his son to use it thoughtfully. So the king hides this Triforce somewhere in Hyrule, and only tells one person where the hiding place is: his younger daughter, Zelda. Sometime later, the king does indeed die, and his son, the prince, becomes the next king. But this former prince soon discovers that although he's inherited practically everything from his father, there seems to be one thing missing: the Triforce. And this is where another character enters the story, a mysterious advisor known only as the Magician. This magician approaches the new king and tells him that there is only one person in all of Hyrule that knows the Triforce's secret hiding place, and that is his sister, Zelda. So the king, along with this mysterious magician, begins interrogating Princess Zelda, trying to get her to say where the Triforce has been hidden. But she refuses to say. So then the magician takes over, threatening to cast an evil spell on her if she won't tell him where this Triforce is located. But still, she refuses. Now, the magician is angry, and in a rage he begins casting the dark spell on Zelda. The former prince, suddenly realizing he's gone too far, tries to stop the magician before it's too late. But the prince fails. The magician casts his spell on Zelda, and the princess falls into a coma, a deep, eternal sleep. At just the same moment, the magician himself collapses to the ground. He has used so much energy casting the spell on Zelda that he dies there and then. And that's what happens to the first ever Princess Zelda. No one discovers who that mysterious magician was, but the prince immediately regrets getting involved with him. He mourns his sister and feels so guilty for what he's done that he decides every female member of the royal family of Hyrule shall be named Zelda, so that she is never forgotten. Also, the forever sleeping Princess Zelda is brought to a chamber within Hyrule Castle. One day, perhaps a hero will come along to wake her. So that is the legend of the very first Princess Zelda and her brother the prince. He plays a really pivotal role in the events of the Zelda series, according to the story of this game, since if it wasn't for him, the various princesses of this long-running royal family would each have their own name, rather than all being called Zelda. Now, of course, this story doesn't really match up with later games in the Zelda series, because almost 25 years after The Legend of Zelda 2 was released, Nintendo decided to make a new Zelda game, which told the story of the first ever Link and Zelda. That game was Skyward Sword, and it doesn't really have a thing in common with the backstory I've just told you about today. In fact, that's probably why almost no one knows about this Prince of Hyrule, this forgotten member of the Hyrule royal family, since Skyward Sword's story clashes so heavily with the backstory of Zelda 2, it seems like Nintendo have kind of swept that backstory under the rug a little. As far as I can tell, there's been basically no mention of this prince from an official Nintendo source, with 2 exceptions, so let's talk about them both. The first happened all the way back in 1988, the very same year that Zelda 2 was released. Nintendo released an official manga adaptation of the game's story, drawn by a manga artist known as Ranmaru. And in the 3 volumes of this manga adaptation, the backstory outlined in the game is stuck to pretty closely. The legend of the first Princess Zelda and her brother the prince plays out much as before. The prince and his sister are represented by shadowy silhouettes, which is a shame. It would have been nice to see another drawing of the prince's face, but you get what you get. This time though, the evil magician doesn't die after cursing Zelda, and in fact, he manages to escape. Unbeknownst to everybody, he remains alive for hundreds of years, up until the present day, all so that he could get his hands on this Triforce. And finally, it's revealed that Ganon had taken over his body, turning him into a kind of version of Ganon. Yikes. So that is the first time the Prince of Hyrule has been mentioned by Nintendo. What about the second? Well, that comes in the book Hyrule Historia from 2011, which serves as a kind of encyclopedia covering the entire Zelda series. We don't get a lot more information about Zelda's brother here. The book tells us, though the prince and young princess were already heirs to the throne, the king of Hyrule had doubts as to the worth and character of his son. Yeah, that stacks up. But interestingly, Hyrule Historia does try and fix that timeline contradiction, saying, Princess Zelda won. Though the land of Hyrule had seen other princesses bearing the name of Zelda, it was Princess Zelda I who inspired the custom of calling every princess by that name. In other words, yes, we know the manual says that this Zelda is the first generation Zelda, but it turns out there were actually other princesses before her who also happened to be named Zelda. Fine, okay. But the other thing we get from Hyrule Historia is a tiny little epilogue as to what happens to the Prince of Hyrule. Apparently, the former prince reformed his ways and governed the land to the best of his ability, but the kingdom continued to fall into decline. The proud kingdom of Hyrule had once covered a vast area of land, but the passage of the ages saw its decline, and it eventually shrank into a single, small kingdom. And it's that single small kingdom that we see in the original Legend of Zelda. That's right, it's all Princess Zelda's brother's fault that Hyrule became so small. And that is the story of the Prince of Hyrule, one of the most forgotten characters from the Zelda canon. But now you know who he is, and hopefully you've learnt a lesson from him too. Don't trust magicians! So today I talked about Princess Zelda's family, but what about Princess Peach's family? Well, a couple of years back, I made a video all about King Peach, Princess Peach's father. If you're interested in Princess Peach's parents, then be sure to check out the video. And I'll see you next time. Bye!